It's
Hermetic podcast for our third roundtable in 5 years. Welcome to my special guests, P.D. Newman, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Daniel Rekshan of D-SETI, all presenters at Enochian this year. Get your tickets today. Well, not tickets. Join the society and then come to our private event. And without further ado, let's get into the madness that is the modern world, the world in which aliens, UAP disclosure, government spies, and Enochian magic all converge to celebrate John Dee's birthday, I assume. So I'm going to take the role primarily as a listener and an audience member for this, people. You're welcome to super chat questions. We'll put them on screen and ask them. And that supports, of course, the live streaming software, which is, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to have, to begin with, we're going to have, and happy July 4th to all you Yankees out there. We love you. Much love from the Great White North, and much, love from down under, from Frater Eleftheria, who's in the middle of winter, so he's got a cold, of course. And let's turn it over to Frater Eleftheria to explain to those who are wondering what is going on. What is going on? Frater, the stage is yours. Tell us what is going on.
okay. Well, I'll try and lay out the weirdness as logically as I can. But basically, there is a guy called Matthew Brown who is a whistleblower who worked at the Pentagon and blew the whistle on a podcast called Weaponized on UAP phenomena that the US government was monitoring. So fed into the kind of UFO UAP disclosure movement. And that was kind of what he was associated with. And then during the sort of vicious breakup between Elon Musk and Donald Trump in the White House recently, he took the opportunity to, at both of them in an X post, talking about some ways that Elon Musk could get ahead of the curve now that he's kind of fighting with the government, and talked a lot about AI, but also kind of put a lot of little riddles embedded in there, which seemed to be about occult stuff. And one of the things that he referenced was, well, he used a still from one of my videos, from my channel on esoteric knowledge and things like that. He used a screen grab of a diagram that I'd drawn that was to do with Enochian magic. And that went out there and everyone was like, what is going on? I had never heard of this guy before. And then suddenly my channel blew up, like my stats blew up, and people were saying, Matt Brown sent them. And so I had to look into it, and then found all of this madness going on. And it's been a few weeks of kind of putting my hand up and saying, I'm the guy that did the diagram and explaining what that means. But there's also been a process of trying to figure out why Matthew Brown, a UAP whistleblower, would have been connecting things to Enochian magic. So I've been going down this rabbit hole, as I'm sure a lot of people have been following this development of what the heck is the connection between angels and UFOs and Enochian magic. And it couldn't come at a better time for Enochiacon as well, like you said, Frater. So I guess that's what we're exploring today. Does that pretty much sum it up?
I think so.
Yeah, it's great. The Immaculate Constellation report to give the context. So Matthew Brown reported his whistleblowing was on the Immaculate Constellation program, which came after allegedly the 2017 New York Times article where we've got Elizondo talking about the ATIP OFSAP programs, which were run by Robert Bigelow up till a certain point. And then it shifts over to someone. It wasn't clear to me in the literature. So one of the things in my literature reviews, this post revealed was where that sort of surveillance of UAP reports and things like that are going into the government, right? Like, so the Bigelow was collecting these reports. He has a database. There's a lot of information about how he did that. And then it went kind of dark. We don't know what was happening. And then Matthew Brown says, oh, wait, no, the government's still looking into these reports. They're doing it through this Immaculate Constellation program. These are all the activities they're doing. And it's sort of that kind of political drama, I think, reveals who those players are that have taken on the sort of Bigelow space, basically. That's my understanding or guess right now. I was hoping some of you guys could help correct that understanding.
No, that's about as far as I got, and in that domain, you know, my focus was mostly on the Enochian references, the subtle throw to Jack Parsons, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It might be worthwhile to explain that connection between Jack Parsons, Enochian, NASA, and what might be going on here. And that's a lot to dig into. And I know I've been watching your stuff, rather, Eleftheria. You've talked about the rituals and learning about Jack Parsons through being initiated in OTO. I knew about it just from Wikipedia, and I was like, there's got to be a connection, because it also ties in with some Scientology as well. But I think either you two have more an understanding of that kind of Babylon working and how that relates.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the connection between Jack Parsons, well, starting from the beginning, I guess, is Jack Parsons' connection to rocketry, which is more well known, you know, the pioneer of American rocketry, and he also had a double life as an occultist. And yeah, Jack Parsons was big into the occult and did a bunch of rituals. So I guess that sets the scene with Jack Parsons, and then the connection with Enochian is that he did this Babylon working, one of his main kind of big rituals to usher in the new Aeon, and he used Enochian calls as part of that ritual. In my opinion, he didn't use them as intended. I think that John Dee would roll in his grave if he knew that the Enochian calls are being used to summon the Scarlet Woman. But anyway, he kind of used that in his rituals, and then allegedly opened a portal to another dimension. And there's some people that say that the UAPs appeared around that time, and maybe they came through this portal. So I guess that would be how I would canvas all the little connections between Jack Parsons and the occult and Enochian and UAPs.
I have to say, I don't think John D would be upset if if the magician explained to him, we think your vision of fortitude was this Scarlet Woman, and we were trying to evoke the vision of fortitude. I think D would, who knows what he would say to that. He might say, hold on to your wife, or he might say, brilliant, that was the purpose of everything I did in my life. So that's interesting. And another bit of context the listeners here might find funny is all of these presenters are presenting at our second annual D and Kelly conference, Enochian, online or in person here in Vancouver. And PD Newman reached out to me. He's very excited about the Dan Brown post. And PD, you said, you're like, look at this. I'm not going to read the message, but it's like, you're like, this is amazing. I want to talk about this. And I was like, oh my God, you don't know. And he's like, what? I'm like, this image is from Eleftheria, who's your conference mate. Holy cow. And you're like, wow. It's like, I think we all need to have a talk about this. And so here we are. It's so important we're doing it on July 4th, taking PD away from probably the opportunity to run around and have a Roman candle fights with his kid or something. So thanks for taking the time to be here, brother. And I think over to you.
Well, just in regard to the Parsons connection, the reference is when he says something about rockets or so 1947. I think that was how Brown put it. But Brown's handle on X is something Abramelin. Do one of you guys know? It's something.
Son of.
But I just recently.
Son of Abramelin.
Yeah. So I just recently was flipping through the Den Guth translation, not the Mather's translation, and saw that one of the Kamea, one of the magic squares, and this one is a 4x4 grid. The Kamea, the function of it is to make one travel through the sky like a cloud, and NASA is in there. NASA is one of the columns in this square. So the letters involved, if you're familiar with how Kameas work, it's 4 letters that are spun much like a magic circle with numbers, but they're placed in various positions. But I think it's the second or third cell of the square. It says NASA. So I thought that was really strange. And of course, Parsons has the connection with L. Ron Hubbard, and Hubbard with Scientology and the whole alien connection. I can't remember what they call them. Is it Xenon or something like that? But there's a alienish, UAP kind of a connection there. So there's a lot going on with the Parsons thing. But what I really found fascinating was that he's overall in the post, what he's addressing is Trump and Musk's disagreement. And there's a lot of conspiracy posts about Trump resembling very closely, and he does in some photos, L. Ron Hubbard. And it kind of illustrates this superimposition of the two, Musk as Parsons, which makes, that's the square right there. But Musk as Parsons, which made me think, that there was this subtle indication of Musk blowing himself up, either politically or, it just seemed very, very suggestive.
Have you seen the image of Musk where he's wearing the satanic armor with the inverted pentagram on the front and the 666.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, the photo's out there somewhere, and it's very much in the spirit of Jack Parsons as well, I think.
This must be an old picture.
Yeah.
A young Musk.
Last few years, I think. Have to try and find it.
I'll track it. I'm going to look for it right now while we're doing this.
Where does the meme end and the reality begin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe Jack Parsons is reincarnated as Elon Musk. Who knows?
Who knows? You know, there's been some speculation within occult circles that Parsons was himself a reincarnation of Thomas Vaughan, the famous alchemist, the brother of Henry Vaughan, the famous poet. As Vaughan killed himself with a form of mercury. I think he inhaled the fumes instead of dropping. I think the thing with Parsons is he dropped fulminate of mercury or some form of mercury. But there's even that. Thomas and Henry were twins, and Elon Musk, of course, he has twins. Two of his children are twins, and Jack Parsons. There's a fellow in rocket science today whose name is Jack Parsons, and they call him Jack Parsons' twin. So I just wondered if that's what Brown was subtly poking at, was that relationship between Trump and Musk as being like an echo of the Parsons and Hubbard fallout.
Yeah. Does that mean that the portal is going to open up again in the next year?
We can only hope.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been tracking about Scientology, and it's by way of one of Chris Bledsoe's dreams reported by his son on a podcast interview clipped on X somewhere. So Bledsoe, if you guys aren't familiar, is an experiencer who is talked about in government circles. So he's sort of sanctioned by the UAP disclosure narrative. Oh, good. That's the...
There it is.
That is ridiculous.
So, Bledsoe is an experiencer who's like talked about by the government, and he's sort of in that realm, like the intelligence community circles that intersect with the whistleblowing communities and things like that. Honor Bledsoe as a source of kind of, they look to his experience, and he talks about interactions with orbs and things like that, and light beings, and he has this dream, and the dream had a very strong narrative of like Bigfoots from Mars being transported after a nuclear war. And the person who was receiving this testimony goes, I don't know what this is talking about, but actually, so then the alleged figure, Tim Taylor, who is allegedly Elon Musk's ambassador to NASA or something, talks to Bledsoe and says, oh no, you know the most truth out of anyone here because of that dream. That's actually true. And it really confused everyone in that situation, according to this video I'm vaguely remembering. But the mythology is almost one-to-one this sort of, from what I understand, is the higher level Scientology Xenu mythology of nuclear war and thetans and being dropped in a volcano and things like that. So there was a very strong connection between the did we break up a little bit?
He's on Starlink. Yeah, you're on. Yeah, he's on Starlink. Ironically,
I will be better in a second or two. anyways, this gets to Frater Eleftheria. So this gets to Frater Eleftheria. This is why I think, like, I go like, why were you selected, right? Why was that information, right? Is it the Aborimon derivation that he's communicating, or is it your testimony that, like, what is it, right? So I looked in and I was like, okay, you have a contact experience with orbs in childhood dreams and things like that. That is similar to the Bledsoe's accounts that to me feel very true. I have a lot of documentation that seems like debunking of his testimony, but I believe actually in a lot of it too. And so there's a strong overlap between what seems like the authentic experience of these vague connections with light beings that aren't really ETs or anything that's too defined. So I was wondering if you could, like, that's what when I look at Scientology, the connection to Parsons, and I'm looking at what's happening now, I go, there's something in there that just connects all of it, and I think it's through the lived experience of the light beings or something like that. So does that ring any bells to anyone here?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I've been grappling with all this information and trying to make sense of it is just coming to terms with the light beings are real. It's not just a psychological projection, and other people will describe it now, so it's definitely real. But they're different from maybe some other UAP phenomena that might be government top secret aircraft or extraterrestrial or whatever. But then the thing I'm still not convinced of, which some people have said, is that the light beings are the same as biblical angels and even Enochian angels. And that is a fascinating proposition, but I just wish that we could find more direct evidence to draw that connection.
Light, when you say light beings, do you mean anthropoid or orbs? What are you talking about?
Orbs of light. Yeah. Orbs of light in the physical, and then they can contact you in dreams and visions and take on different forms. And that's kind of what my experience has been of these things. And I think from what I've read and looked up of Bledsoe's material, he describes something similar. Yeah, I really couldn't say any more about them than what I've experienced myself and what I've kind of deduced about them. I'm going to try and summarize all that in a video today, but yeah.
What's the proximity to? Are they way in the sky, or?
I've seen what I believe to be the light beings quite far away in the sky, but I've had a few experiences where they're very close, like behind a tree on the next property over, and unmistakably orbs of light. They're not lanterns or drones or anything like that. Yeah, and then other things that have sort of flown past my face very quickly, and stuff that kind of flashes like a floodlight in the backyard and then disappears again. And all these experiences, just to add a bit of context to this new weirdness, these particular experiences that I had come from doing the CE5 meditation of Dr. Stephen Greer, who's quite a big person in the UAP world. So yeah, it's essentially a magical ritual to summon UAPs, and it works.
That was my next question. Was it following some protocols, or was it are you a practitioner in terms of Enochian work, or?
Yeah.
Do you get the phenomena following Enochian work?
No. So after I've done Enochian rituals, I'll get visions, like thoughts or images will pop into my head. much the same as when you're imagining something, but I've never had a physical manifestation of anything. Only during CE5 has that happened. That's the only. I've done a lot of different rituals in my time as a, practicing occultist, but that was the only thing that brought a physical manifestation like that.
We get them here. I live in Tupelo, Mississippi. We're working on Alec Hawkins and I, we're working on a couple of documentaries, but one of them is on UAP phenomena in the state of Mississippi, which you don't hear much about, but it's apparently pretty prevalent. But here where I live in Tupelo, any given night, as long as it's not cloudy, you can step outside and at least where I'm located, it's above my house, orbs by the hundreds. The most we counted was in one night was a single file line of, we stopped counting at 80, but they just kept coming and coming and coming. And recently I was managed to get this on film, so I have it on my phone, but the same thing, one after another, equal distant, following each other, and they in both occasions they're either going towards or away from the Orion constellation, which, if you know anything about the role that Orion plays in the Mississippian Native American culture and Egypt and all, it's in the pyramid texts, but there's what can only be described as a portal there, where the ecliptic, the path through which the planets travel, rise in the east and set in the west, through which the ecliptic intersects with the Milky Way. So there are 2 points where that happens. And one of them, the one that was used by the Mississippians as a way to access the path, what they call the path of souls, which is the Milky Way, following death, is located in the Orion Nebula. They didn't recognize it as Orion, obviously. That's a Greek convention, but nonetheless, they recognized that particular cluster of stars, which they call the Chief's Hand constellation. In both cases, there are 100 or more. They're going to or from Orion, but you can see single ones and double ones that seem to be going, any direction. But yeah, they're orbs. So they're, when you zero in on them, they just look like white balls of light from down here. But when we zero in on the film, it's clear that it's not white. It's plasmoid, constantly rotate. It looks like it's spinning, and multiple color profiles in it. And but is that what you're describing? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get that closer look at them, but yeah, they were literally just balls of light from what I could see. Very soft, ethereal light, not like a mechanical light.
exactly.
And and the two that I saw really close up, going behind the tree, there were sort of two together, and they were in a very tight knit formation. So it was almost as though there was an invisible frame connecting them, because they moved perfectly together in sync like that, which sounds similar to what you were describing, where there's some that are 2 by 2.
Mm-hmm. Equal distant and same trajectory.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And how do we know these aren't government drones or other devices? Because that's the first thing everyone says whenever I try to talk about this. I go to the homeless guy on the corner. I'm like, do you believe? Have you seen the orbs? And they're like, It's the government spying on us. No, I'm just kidding. But like, what is the main reason we know that, other than the fact that they seem to break the law of physics, which you'd think would be enough for most people?
Well, in my case, as soon as there are a number of them moving in the sky, almost without fail, military helicopters come in, planes come in, and I've got those on camera too. But they always, as soon as the activity starts up, military black helicopters come through, and when they come through, the activity stops. So that says to me that they're aware of it and observing it, but are just as dumbfounded as I am about what it is.
And another thing that I would add to that as well is that people within the military have reported these things, or things that fit the same description, appearing over nuclear weapons facilities and shutting them down, almost like a kind of like a warning, like against that sort of militarization and mutually assured destruction. So it'd be very strange if the government sent its own drones to shut down its own weapons facilities. It kind of suggests that it's something else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of trickster elements to the phenomena as well. One of the things that I observe is looking into the actual documentation of these orbs. And so for a little sympathy to the guy down at the gas station yelling at Frater RC about the UAPs, I go, actually, if you look, so I've gone through Chris Bledsoe's Instagram reel of all these things, and I developed open source software to analyze some of this stuff to get values and patterns out of the pulsing and whatever, to see if I can discern some sort of communication. And I wasn't able to discern a pattern that goes, these are definitely orbs. I was able to discern a pattern that most experiencers they don't have the discernment. They present documentation of like ISS or satellites as orbs, but there's also this other constellation of experience like prophetic dreams or intuitions or other things, and they describe other orbs that they don't have documentation for in a similar way. The archetype of this for me is the Phoenix Lights. So there are multiple black ops things that explain the Phoenix Lights, but actually there were 2 or 3 waves of encounters. Stephen Greer was there. He claimed responsibility for some of it. And there's documentation that is both of like, now it's known that the sort of inflatable kind of V's that were huge blimp things with lights on them explain it. But there were also other testimonies like from Tom King, who filmed the Phoenix Lights, about how it is a non-mechanistic light. Like the words Frater Eleftheria use, it is not a mechanical light. It's sort of like this otherworldly light. John Ramirez, who is another guy in UAP disclosure, whistleblowing circles, talks about it in the same way, and talks about how it appears in sensor data as just this like weird ball of light thing. So there's these qualities to that light and the people reporting it that, for me, even if their documentation resolves into craft, like knowing black ops or satellites, there's something really real here. So that's when I heard, when I was reviewing Frater Eleftheria's testimony, he goes, I had dreams of these things. I go, oh, that's part of the pattern or whatever, right? So
there's a pattern. I'm not losing it.
So that's the but this is why this is in part what I'm curious about, is what is actually going on with this tweet. Like, what is going on? Because I go, I don't know why Brown selected you, and then I go like, no, you're exhibiting the same complex of symptoms as Bledsoe, right? Like in some way, shape, or form. Enochian's coming in a specific, like the Borimon derivation is showing up, and there's so like am not sure how to make sense of this, but it feels as if there is a real understanding of both that sort of deeper orb connection and the trickster elements around it, and some of the ceremonial, religious or ritual things they're going on right now. And I don't need like Matthew Brown's tweet today with all this Masonic ritual stuff. I don't even know how to make sense of, but something seems to be relating ritual and these trickster orbs together in this post that ties in Elon Musk and all this politics or AI stuff.
Well, it's clear he's immersed in the grimoire tradition, or he wouldn't choose Son of a Bramelin as his handle. So I would expect him to be familiar with the literature. But what's odd is to take the leap and tie it to UAP phenomena. Well, it's odd superficially because that stuff's been there. You know, the D and Kelly episode, it is vague in terms of non-human intelligence. They're angels for him, but at the same time, he's limited in his vocabulary. What would he call them? I think that's the closest thing that he would have to identify it. But by the time we get to Aleister Crowley, who believed he was himself a reincarnation of Edward Kelly, when he was doing the Emelantra working, he makes contact with an entity that calls himself Lam, and his drawing,
fantastic picture.
Yeah, and his drawing it resembles nothing so much as a gray alien. But again, he had no frame of reference for aliens. He interpreted this in a very theosophical kind of hidden ascended master in Tibet, very Blavatskyan way to look at it. But one of the things Lam says is something about it's all in the egg. And he's got that egg-shaped head, which led Kenneth Grant. He gave that picture as a gift to Kenneth Grant. He told Grant he could ask for any one thing, and he wanted the Lam picture. And Grant published his own protocols for making contact with Lam, and set up a database for anyone who had worked with those protocols and made contact. And it's all about the egg, envisioning yourself in this egg. And while one faction of occultists has chosen to interpret that as kind of the Orphic egg, I think it's much more interesting with the recent testimony of Barber, with the recovery of the egg-shaped UAP, and how this is feeding into the narrative. But it just goes to show that this stuff, there he is, Lam. It just goes to show that this stuff has been present in occultism for a very long time. We just have to learn how to read what they're saying within the context of what language they had access to. But I think in many cases, especially this one, it's very you can make a very strong argument for the fact that this could be one of the earliest accounts of contact, outside of maybe Sun Ra. I don't know if you're familiar with the jazz musician Sun Ra, who was he was an African American from Alabama, not far from where I live. But he was abducted by beings that he claimed were from Saturn, that took him to Saturn and spoke in a musical language. But that was back in the 30s, so before Betty and Barney Hill,
Yeah,
question. He's an occultist.
The question for me is like, where does that reference come into this history? Since some of the history involves like Scientology, and that informed, I believe, the remote viewing programs that from which the kind of the psionic UAP whistleblowing now tradition comes out of. So it's sort of there, and so this sort of reference to alien, like where does that actually come into our understanding? The Betty and Barney Hill case is interesting because it references some of this, both the hypnosis, science fiction. It was the hypnotist was a former military guy. He like got his practice doing truth serum and hypnosis to war veterans. So it's like, you go, it's like, where does this actually, like, where does the reference come from? Is it actually a physical encounter, or is it sort of, does it come from the shell of trickster that surrounds the light, like the amorphous light being or something like that? That's the question for me. And the answer to that question might reveal what is the government actually hiding? Are they hiding bodies and craft, or are they hiding a sort of occult esoteric wisdom that they've kind of blindly encountered through these sort of like Jack Parsons occult friends or whatever? Are they like, is that where hitchhikers come in? Like, where is the imagination where this reference to aliens come in, or is it actually a lived experience? It's still a big question in my mind.
I think it's probably a little bit of both. And I mean, granted that NASA isn't the U.S. government, but they've always been fascinated by the occult and involved in some way with the occult. I mean, it's not just Parsons. The boy on whom the Exorcist film was based was eventually recruited by NASA and worked at NASA until he died. You know, what interest does NASA have in the kid from The Exorcist? You know, but there's a fairly recent series of books that's been published. I can't remember the author's name. They're in my to read pile, but it's called Ecology of Souls, and it's looking at something that Whitley Strieber had looked at for a long time, was the interrelation of the dead with the UAP phenomenon. Because when he first had his experience, he saw someone that he knew there, and you know, for him, he's thinking, are they in on it? What? And shortly after the experience, he finds out that 6 months before the experience, that guy had died. So his ghost was essentially there. But what he's looking at in this Ecology of Souls book is that phenomenon, and asking the question, are these the same territory? Are these souls of dead people? And I think that's the way it was interpreted, like Pasulka talks about, and the Middle Ages, when they would observe these very same orbs moving through the sky, but it instead resulted in the Catholic Church adopting the doctrine of purgatory because they needed some way to explain this. And all of a sudden now these are souls that are in between heaven or hell. They're clearly still here, but they're in their own kind of dimension, kind of state, which is purgatory for them. But this association with the dead has been pretty prevalent.
The body of light, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. The body of light that survives death, which most of these occult orders, and even just religions, you know, you've got that in Taoism, the generation of the body of light, that we don't have it automatically. It takes these imaginal practices, the breath work, it takes ceremony and all these things to develop it. It's connected with the imaginal, what Iamblichus would call the active of imagination. That's where Jung got the term from. But it describes the faculty of the imagination as autonomous, instead of passive imagination, which is more you're daydreaming, you're generating the content, but just like with a psychedelic drug. Anyone who's taken a good dose of mushrooms knows what watching your imagination, you have nothing to do with what it displays. You know what that means. You're familiar with that. But I think most people are, they just don't have a frame of reference for it. But that's what a dream is, right? At least a dream that wasn't intentionally generated through ritual, hibernation, what they call it, dream hibernation.
What was really interesting for me about the L. Ron Hubbard connection to all of this is that I always found the whole Thetan idea that the Thetans are in our body and we have to purify them a little bit silly. But after doing Dr. Litwa's Hermetica 1 translation for the original Hermetica text, it was hard to, after, for recording that for Audible for 65,000 words of it, to not be like, oh, L. Ron Hubbard, for all of his kookiness, he's talking about the same. This idea is in the Hermetica, that we're filled with daimones, spirits that make all of reality function. Yeah, and initiation, union of your soul with your nous, which is a daimon, therefore like a god, is about, well, it's not about expelling or purifying those dirty daimones of our body, but it's about opening and connecting our soul with our nous through wondering beyond nature. So in the Hermetica, anyone can become an initiate on the way of Hermes. You just have to wonder about what's beyond the physical, and that process with a guide will get you there. And so it's shockingly
spelling in chapter 11 or 13, but they do expel the negative, the vices in the form of daemon.
Yeah, the kako daimones. Right. Yeah, you want to expel the kako. So yes, so exactly. And Hanegraaff, Dr. Hanegraaff has mentioned that groups in South America have reached out to him saying they're now using the practice of the vowel sounds and the chants from the Hermetists of 3rd century Alexandria in ceremony with Aya to do exactly that, expel the kakodaimones from their beings. So I'm not really happy about the fact that all of a sudden L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology makes a whole lot more sense to me. This is not a pleasing thing. I'm happy to report.
What makes sense to you is what Hubbard took from legitimate work, legitimate tradition.
Yes,
that's not his shit. I mean, he's a thief in this territory.
So he stole the kakodaimones from the Hermetica and the boat from Jack Parson, along with his wife. If I'm not mistaken.
Along with his wife. That's right.
That's right.
And the DMT entities, whenever Greenwich University gave DMT to all these participants, and 94% of them reported contact with other beings, some of them described them as angels, some of them as aliens, some of them as elves, right? All the fairies. But we're in the same territory. And I don't know if you remember McKenna talking about smoking DMT and the elves would jump into his chest and then come back out. And he said that he spoke with a shaman about this, a Shipibo shaman, who said that, oh yes, when there are techniques, when they jump in, you have to keep them in there. And the more you can get in your body is the more magic powers you have, the more powerful you are as a shaman. But it's impossible to hear that and not think spirits jumping into your body,
Well, what else are we doing in our magical traditions? If that sounds a lot like building relationships with spirits and familiar spirits and servient spirits and servient angels, right? It really does line up well with that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a process of integration of those elements to become a whole person or something like that. But I was reminded actually when Frater asked, so you were talking about the clearing of the daemons in Hermeticism. It sounds very similar as well to the Gnostic texts and the way they describe how the divine spark that is everybody's essential nature kind of descends through the planetary spheres and the elemental spheres, and as it goes, it accumulates the vices and the kind of the baggage of each of those energies, and that's what keeps it sort of trapped in the physical world. So maybe maybe Parsons and Hubbard were having a chat one night about all that stuff.
I'm sure they must have. And the interesting thing, I'm very fascinated these days, having studied now with Dr. Litwa for quite a while. And he's a great scholar. Check him out, people. Dr. M. David Litwa, and the M stands for Magus, of course. No, but maybe. The differences and nuances between the Hermetica, the Hermetism, the original Hermetism. So Hermetism in academic talk refers to usually the original 3rd century-ish communities that produced, out of which the Hermetica texts were written. And Hermeticism is then the adoption of those ideas into the Renaissance culture and other traditions that then fed into them. That's just how academics use it. Not all academics, but a lot of them. So that's something just to keep in mind for pedantic purposes, but it is helpful. And the interesting difference between what I've seen in the Hermetica versus some forms of Gnosticism is the idea of the tunic of fire, right? This idea of the tunic of fire. It sounds a lot like the body of light, of course. And it's achieved by when you die, your soul then unites with your nous, which is your daimon, and or not if you're not initiated, if you haven't initiated yourself through reverence and adoration and wonder at existence. Life and light is the words they constantly use in the Hermetica. So if you do that, you achieve your tunic of fire, and then you rise up and become like the star gods or like the angels, and you become a god. And you are already a god in your body. You're 2 times a god. You're a dying god in your body, and you're like a star god through your nous. So humans aren't just like gods. If anyone's like, oh, they think you're like gods, it's like, no, we think we're like 2 gods in one. So suck it, The Hermetica is very optimistic. That's the word for it. Optimistic. Yeah. And why not? We need a little optimism these days, eh?
And the tunics, that language comes from Porphyry. When Porphyry is describing when the soul descends through the 7 spheres to be born, at each planetary sphere it acquires a tunic. And with that tunic, so you say you go through the sphere of Venus, you're going to acquire a tunic that carries the qualities of the vices and virtues of Venus. So maybe caritas as a virtue and lust as a vice. But conversely, on the process of ascent and theurgy, you're casting off one tunic at a time until you're naked and able to ascend, because they weigh the soul down. They keep you earthbound. But that's exactly what we see with the myth of Ishtar descending into Ker. She passes through seven arches, and at each one she has to take off an article of clothing until she arrives at the throne of her sister Ereshkigal. But the model is identical. It's just I think what's changed is the Ishtar model is moving towards the center on a horizontal plane, whereas for Porphyry it's a vertical process.
I just want to address some comments someone's made here for the sake of in case people are not aware in the chat. The Rosicrucian connection, says Lapis Exilis, is a complete gimmick. We all know that it was a falsification in the original order documents. Now, if you're referring to the Rosicrucian manifestos from 1614, 15, and 17, those aren't fabrications or falsifications. They emerged out of a very complex stew of influences that may go back before John Dee. And we'll be talking about that in Enochian, and you can look into that through Dr. Terry Burns' channel and other people's. Now, when you say, I'm saying this because I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, Lapis Exilis. And when you say we know it was a falsification of original order docs, that makes me think you're talking about the Golden Dawn cipher manuscripts. And unless I'm wrong, and you're not referring to that, in which case I apologize, but if you are referring to original order documents like the cipher manuscripts, the Rosicrucian connection is not in any way a gimmick. the reason the Golden Dawn's a Rosicrucian order is because it was founded by members of the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, which is the British later evolution of the Ordine Goldene Rosenkreuze in Germany in the 1700s. So that's part of the steady transmission of Rosicrucianism from the writing and publication of the Fama Fraternitatis and the other Rosicrucian manifestos. So not a gimmick, it's a natural progression of these traditions and the teachers teaching each other. If you're referring to William Wynne Westcott talking about Anna Sprengel and that was Westcott's own fabrication and has nothing to do with the natural transmission of information and lineages, or whatever you want to call them, from the OGR to the SRIA to the Golden Dawn and RRDC. Yeah, so just to clarify that, because I'm sure there's some people who are wondering what you're talking about, and we do know what you're talking about, unless I've mistaken your meaning. Thanks for the comments, everybody. It's great. And yeah, I removed the chat bar from the right of the screen because it was blocking the handsomest man's here. Well, he's a contender for the handsomest. I'm second runner-up. And so I removed that, which is why I'm putting all your comments on screen. And I hope you, my fellow podcasters, don't mind me doing that. It's nice to get everyone involved on this beautiful Friday evening on Enochian Independence Day.
Well put.
The connection we've been talking about with like Iamblichus and like all of that, right? Like my understanding from, I'm not an esotericist, so I studied classical liberal arts in St. John's College, so it's like great books. So we did a lot of Socrates, we did a lot of Plato, we read the great books. I hadn't heard of Iamblichus and Porphyry forever, right? And when I was looking for precedents for this orb pattern I was talking about, I looked and I read Gregory Shaw's Neoplatonism and the Luminous Body, right? And I go, oh my God, this is the precedent. That was the moment where I was like, there's a pattern, right? They know it, we know it. And why don't we actually know it more publicly? Well, there's this whole empire interaction with Neoplatonism and Christianity and things like that, which I see mirrored today in the implications of the Brown tweet, right? So like, who is active, right? There is kind of an architecture of new Christianity happening in association with empire, it looks like. And there, through the Bledsoe case, it is apparent to me that there is a government interest in at least the architecture of the CE5, like New Age, like orb or angel orb community. Like, so it's like, what is actually going on? Some of the insight that I'm looking through, because I'm tracking these things, I was kind of putting it together, is the relationship of the Palantir firm with interest in Diana Pasolka and things like that. So Palantir is the U.S. surveillance, is an agent of the empire, right? So this is, but it's based around a Showstone mythology, which is the Lord of the Rings Showstone, right? Like that is actually very similar to D. So there's these themes sort of recurring from history to history to history. So when I look at who took the place of Bigelow after 2017, after the failed Kona Blue proposal, which seemed to be supported by Bigelow and a banker, Hans Adam II. So someone earlier was like, CIA is the guards for the bankers, right? So that made me immediately think of Hans Adam II, who is I believe, spiritual heir of Maximilian, right? So he's the Holy Roman Empire. After the war, they established Liechtenstein Principality as a home for European banking conglomerations and stuff. Hans Adam and Bigelow funded the Unusual Personal Experiences Survey, which surveyed 6,000 Americans, said 2% of those are abductees because they have a complex of symptoms like appearance of orbs in the room and powerful dreams of entity encounters, right? Like, oh my God, right? So there's these sort of connections coming in. So the question for me is, what is the kind of universal function of this empire that has pushed against Iamblichus and this like orb knowledge, right? This is my understanding from Frater Eleftheria's kind of talking about Black Iron Prison, like how we're to work with that. That's another reason why I think you might be so like brought forward by this sort of movement, is because of the message around working with a Black Iron Prison. So I've thrown out a lot of weird connections. I'm trying to make these associations there is this actual political thing that seems to be kind of weaponizing evangelical or fundamentalism in Christianity, at least. And I see the weaponized podcast, and I wonder what is actually being weaponized in this case. And I'm not sure if I have a question to pose, but is sort of riffing on that, talking about Yamblicus, I guess, and Empire. Yeah, that's Andrea Puarich and stuff like that. I haven't seen all those connections, but he might be relevant to this as well.
I just wrote the foreword for the new edition of his Sacred Mushroom book.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty.
Do you see any connection? Like, do you see his hands in this at all, or I've just been sort of I listened to Annie Jacobson's The Phenomenon. I'm like, oh my god, I wish I listened to that earlier. But she talked a lot about Puarich, so.
I know more about him from his work directly, but he was involved with Uri Geller, and contacting space brothers as they looked at them. They were very much in that 50s optimism with UAPs that they're here to save us from something, But he was very interested in the use of psychedelics to make contact. And I think, it makes sense because, like, think about the Eleusinian mysteries. You're going to take on thousands of people a year. How do you ensure, what's your fail-safe to make sure that all of them leave changed, saying they had a mystical experience? Drugs are the fail-safe. You give anybody you give a drug to, if you give them enough of it and it's of a certain type, specifically if it's a serotonergic drug, they're going to see other beings and other realms, other worlds. And I think that's the terms that Puharich was thinking in,
I have a interesting comment here that is that some people might disregard as trolling, but you know what? I think it's a wonderful comment and a delightful opportunity for us to comment on this response, actually. So I'll start, and then we'll all get a chance to comment on this person. And I'm not going to treat it as a troll. I think this should be treated seriously because it's a good point. So again, this is Lapis Exilis again saying, Enochiana being shoehorned into ufology is a joke, guys. That's why we're doing this stream, in my opinion, because what the hell? And the person who shoehorned Enochiana into ufology is Matt Brown, which is why he gets his name in the title card for this whole shebang we're doing here. So is it a joke? Well, honestly, maybe. I think it should be taken very, very seriously. And I actually do have an example, a diagram, a very complex diagram that can explain perhaps how seriously this should be taken. So check it out. How can you not
throw it in there?
Take this seriously? I think this is merit of deep semiotic study and contemplation for everybody. So that's just my take on things, and I appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts and feelings about that. Yeah, Enochiana shoehorned into ufology.
I'll just say,
or not.
Yeah, it may well be a joke, but in case people haven't noticed, our reality is kind of a joke at the moment. I mean, like, the J.D. Vance meme has turned into an egregore and is slowly colonizing the internet. I mean, reality is a joke, man. Like, yeah, it's just getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, it's like Daniel said. I mean, the trickster element is inseparable from this. It's going to be jokes, but anything we say, any one of us say, in connection with Enochiana and UAPs should be taken as us attempting to make sense of what Brown tweeted. That's the point of the whole discussion, is what connections is he making and why is he expressing them in the way that he is. But furthermore, to pretend that you know what either one of those phenomena are, Enochiana, angels, UFOs, you're just fooling yourself. Nobody knows what they are. You can pretend all you'd like, but everybody in the world is in the dark about these things. And if we weren't, they wouldn't be mysteries, and we wouldn't still be piddling around with Enochian magic.
Very well said, PD. Very well said. I knew you'd all have brilliant responses to that comment.
Yeah, for me, the post itself, Matthew Brown's tweet associating Enochian and in the testimonies that Frater Eleftheria has put around it. That's for me important, because there's two people, Frater Leach, right? Aaron Leach, right? He
Aaron.
did that, and so there's a choice here, right? And I go like, why? Maybe he was just familiar with your work or connected with it, but there's also it's like questions for me as to why. The fact that Brown has a report in the congressional hearing, and the congressional hearing had a lot of themes that were very different, right? The Immaculate Constellation hearing for me was very different than the other ones. The other ones were just about biologics, nuts and bolts. Let's get a UAP Disclosure Act through. This one was them wrestling with the lived realities. They talked about hybrids. They talked about like all sorts of the stuff you want to know about aliens. They talked about in the hearing. So they opened up that in congressional hearing. There was drama around the Immaculate Constellation report submission. So there was, in the Weaponized podcast, there was actual drama. So this is whatever programming is going on through that stuff. It was planned. This was a planned operation from at least the Weaponized people, at least the people coordinating the UAP disclosure hearings, and it has coordination with the authors of the UAP Disclosure Act. The authors of those UAP Disclosure Act have their fingers in black budgets. That is clear to me, and it is in part funded perhaps by billionaires who are known to architect kind of weaponized religions. So this isn't an actual joke. Like, unless the Enochian mages that are publicly talking about this already step up, we will have an state-sponsored Enochian religion going as violent as evangelical Christianity was in the 90s. And that led to things like Satanic Panic, which Justin Sledge gave a great video on, and I think he'll have something to say about. Like, this is huge. It's a huge issue for me, and I'm glad that Frater Eleftheria, I saw your response. You're like, okay, let's step up and spiritually receive this kind of thing. Like, I'm glad you're putting your hand up and saying, like, yeah, I made that tweet. This is what I think about it. This is what Enochian is in my life, and I think that's really important, because otherwise we'll be programmed like the 80s and 90s programmed all these abduction narratives that I believe actually are like they're false in a way. They're controlling, and they obscure a phenomenon that can really be miraculously healing and inspiring to people.
Yeah, and I think that the whole Matt Brown explosion thing is a build up to something even bigger, and I'll try and go into that in a future video. But yeah, I guess that it's interesting, that thing you said about an Enochian religion. Yeah, it's. I mean, if you read Jason Louve's John Dee and the Empire of Angels, I mean, that pretty much seemed to be the end game of these angels. But I guess, you know, new belief systems can be used as a tool for suppression, or they can be used as a tool for freeing people's minds depending on who gets their hands on them, can't they? I mean, it's like the difference between institutionalized religion and gnosis or something like that. But pressure's on, I guess, if if that's the stakes. But it's a fascinating area, and I think it's going to keep evolving.
What do you think was his purpose of including Aborimon in the tweet, and why do you think he rendered it as an acronym?
I don't know about why it would be an acronym. I think maybe it was a bit of a blind, just to throw people off. That's just my personal opinion. But to choose Aborimon in particular has got very apocalyptic kind of context to it. You know, Aborimon is Abaddon, the angel of destruction, who emerges from the abyss and sends his swarm of locusts after those who don't have the seal of God, and starts to break down the beast system, which is kind of like the manifestation of what Philip K. Dick describes as the Black Iron Prison, or the Empire, as it's set out in the Book of Revelation. So I think he's talking about the end of the present order of things, and the opportunity to replace it with something more enlightened. A lot of people freak out when they think about the end times, and they think it's like the fire and brimstone and the world blowing up and stuff. But if you kind of read between the lines with the sort of language that gets used in terms of the end of the age rather than the end of the world, and mistranslations of the gospel narrative, it really is about the next aeon of human history. And the vision that we get in Revelation describing that is the New Jerusalem, which is a really wonderful thing. So yeah, I guess it's a time, it represents a time of trouble, but also opportunity to kind of change the way we do things and free ourselves from the matrix, as it were.
And what was the other acronym? There were two words at the end.
MMTU. I didn't actually understand what that meant when I did my kind of reaction video, but one of my commenters on that video actually came up with the solution to that little puzzle, which is that it's an abbreviation of many, many tekel upharsin, which is a term that comes from the book of Daniel. And it means you have been weighed in the balance and you have been found wanting. And this is the literal writing on the wall. So we've got the expression like the writings on the wall, like the time is up for some really awful situation. And it comes from the book of Daniel, and it describes the prophecy that was given of the end of the Babylonian Empire. And the sort of supernatural phenomena that were a herald of the end of that empire. So I think it's tying into some very similar themes there again. Babylon is used as a code name for the beast system, or the Roman Empire in the Book of Revelation. And in some sense, our current world order is a continuation of the Roman Empire as well. So it all sort of ties together like that. I think that's a lot of information, but that's what I think the background was getting at.
You got your PKD in there too, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Continuation of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and PKD was an experiencer as well. He was contacted by these light beings. Terence McKenna says he had experiences with them. Grant Morrison met them as well, and
at the Disinfo conference, he talked about that. After doing the Abramelin rite. He was abducted in Kathmandu after doing the Abramelin ritual.
Yeah, okay, I didn't know that. That's another interesting little connection. Yeah, and then Robert Anton Wilson was in a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that Matt Brown saw something or some connection in secret things in the government he couldn't talk about that made him draw connections to Enochian magic and your Borimon discovery in particular?
That is the $1 million question.
At least I'm good for something.
No, well, I wish I had the answer to that.
Did you see the my friend Vanessa? Shout out to Vanessa. She sent me a link to Jesse Michaels interviewing. I can't find his name. Hang on one second. The video is called Green Beret. I saw alien tech in an underground base. Did you watch that?
Was that Blitch or was that Herrera?
Hang on, I'm pulling it up. Let me turn the volume down. Randy Anderson. So Randy Anderson is talking about seeing this alien tech when working with the government. But he saw symbols on it that he couldn't identify, and he later says they looked like Enochian letters.
That's very interesting.
Let's not forget they used Enochian letters on the Stargate in Stargate.
Okay.
It's actually a funny story. Is when the comedy Mothership was built, apparently Rogan changed the letters slightly from the ones in the movie because he was worried they were copyrighted intellectual property of whoever made the movie, and he didn't want to represent them exactly as they were shown in the movie, which was Enochian letters. So but if you look at the comedy Mothership letters, they're still recognizable as Enochian in origin. But yeah, he didn't know what they were. So that's another interesting indicator. And Radiohead recently put Enochian on their album cover. So there's another fun connection.
That's odd. I think they even show up in Lawnmower Man. You know, when he and he's on the VR. Yeah, and he's got all this information hitting him, downloading in his brain. They're all Solomonic seals, and I'm pretty sure some Enochian in there. But virtually every seal from Key of Solomon is being downloaded. And they show up, the letters show up in Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu. Really?
I've never seen that, and I've been looking for an excuse to watch Lawnmower Man again. It terrified me as a kid because it came out when I was very young. But for some reason, my dad showed it to me.
That's a good dad. So horror movies are for children. When else in your entire life are you going to be mortified by something? I'm all for showing little, small, tiny children terrible movies.
So which branch of the government did Brown work in, or do you think it's to discredit this kind of work?
It says he was a Green Beret, but
that ain't nothing, is it?
I'd have to go back and watch the video again to find out. He even says he didn't know why they showed it to him. They were like, come in this room and look at this. And he was given no explanation. Vanessa, hopefully she's watching and she'll pop in and give us some information because she's the one that sent it to me.
The connection with the American Alchemy podcast is interesting to me. Jesse Michaels was a member of Peter Thiel's family capital investment firm. So this is important to understand. Where did Jesse Michaels come from? He's funded by Peter Thiel, who's the chairman of Palantir, right? So what is weird about Jesse Michaels' videos is they're all in Masonic themed things. He interviews Carl Nell in Thiel's studio thing for a conference. There's actually connections there. So the thing that it gets to me is if we're talking about Brown, who's disclosing stuff about surveillance post 2017, that points to Thiel, Palantir, that sort of complex of individuals. And it's like, so then I go like, but then it's like, it looks like, oh, it's like from the ground up or something. So there's a kind of negotiation there of what is actually happening in my mind. And so I have a complex time to understand who is saying what and where, who's the one that's actually interested in Enochian. Maybe it's a couple orders of things. Oftentimes I look to how stories might be manipulated. So when I see like investigations from the military inspiring testimony, like how could you push someone using the mechanisms of suggestion and false memory to carry your narrative forward? That's the question. Authentically and truly. So all of these whistleblowers go up and swear to God that this thing is real and that thing is real, but actually they're emotionally doing something to their audience. But there's a secret thing, like how John D puts secret things in his words that are an actual effective kind of ritual for the person pulling the strings. And that for me feels like what's at play here. It feels to me like Brown is an authentic seeker who has achieved some level of accomplishment along his path, right? He understands the esotericism to some level. Is he capable of architecting a cipher out of Aborimum, MMTU, whatever, all of that stuff, and embedding it in the Immaculate Constellation report and having a page go this way and that way and having all of that media influence be architected around him? I don't think so. So I think his earnest interest in Frater Eleftheria is legitimately earnest and authentic. I think his a connection with Enochian and the UAPs is just as much as any of us on this call. We don't know the connection, right? Like, have I actually summoned a UFO with Enochian? No, but I've summoned 5 books about it. And I like a crazy savant. I've been writing about it for 5 years. So, and I see phenomena happen. So I don't know what's going on, and that's sort of I'm there's complex things happening, and it spins my mind. I'm glad to be talking to you guys who have a kind of sense of the Enochian world, kind of to make sense of it.
Well, yeah, just in case anyone's curious, all of us here have practiced Enochian magic. Some of us keep doing it more than others, perhaps. So I think we're all pretty, I mean, there's a reason I invited all 3 of you to the conference and why we're doing conferences on Enochiana, because it's a fascinating topic that has just refused to vanish, right? Like in the magical traditions, it's well considered to be a fact, even mainly actually by academics, that the grimoire of Arbitel, which appeared first in print rather than manuscript form in Basel, what is now Switzerland, in 1575, would today be the most popular magical grimoire were it not for the resuscitation of Enochian by the Golden Dawn. And so even academics testify to that, but none of them are really, I don't think, have addressed why or how. Jason Liu's probably the closest to come to a study of that, because he's fearless, as we all know, and for better or for worse. And hopefully he'll be at EnochiaCon next year with other people of interest. I might have been speaking to a Mr. Damien the other day, so we'll see what happens. It should be a fun. We're just getting started, people. Yeah. So, actually, that's a good segue. Can we give let's give a little shout out to EnochiaCon and take a quick commercial break. Let's see if I can manage this back end correctly. We'll be right back after these messages, people. This will just be 1 minute of your time to check out what we're up to.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. EnochiaCon is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leach, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member, and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chato's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to EnochiaCon 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to EnochiaCon.com or ArcaneResearchSociety.com for more information.
And we're back. And just to clarify, Dr. Chato's course, everyone will get it if they sign it before the conference period. And it's worth its weight in gold. Trust me, if you're interested in the academic study of Western esotericism and just veritable knowledge in esotericism in general, her course, universities wanted it, multiple groups wanted it. We got it. Don't ask me why or how, but I have a long-standing respect for Dr. Chato. We actually studied under. She did her master's at Exeter under my PhD mentor, Dr. Nicholas Goodrick Clark. May he rest in peace. He's very famous for writing The Occult Roots of Nazism, Black Sun, and Savitri Devi, Hitler's Priestess. And I would like to say something as something that people often miss, because they buy the book Occult Roots of Nazism and then they assume that it's about the occult roots of Nazism. That is not what my Dr. Fata's conclusion was in the book, that there is occult roots of Nazism. Rather the opposite. So were some of Hitler's guys into occultism? Yes. Was it the origin of the National Socialist, Nationalsozialistgesellschaft? Nein, überhaupt nicht. Das ist nicht wahr. It was just a factor among the membership, and a prevalent factor for sure. But it wasn't where Hitler got his ideas from. He got those from a different special place, probably only the route to which could only be described by perhaps Apollyon or some dark force of destruction. Yes, it came from a very dark place in human nature. So don't blame the occult for Nazism, please. They just got into it because why? It's fucking cool. And might lead us to spiritual salvation, perhaps, right? We're all up for a little apocalypsis, a little unveiling of our true and higher natures and higher consciousness to unite with it and gain our tunics of fire. We're back. PD, how's it going, brother?
Going good.
We got a PD and a DP.
I was just thinking about what you were saying about Peter Thiel. Didn't he a couple of months ago publish some weird paper about Armageddon, the end of the world? And
oh, I don't know. Did he?
Yeah, I think he did. That had everybody, all these scholars and people scratching their heads about what the fuck is he talking about. He kind of went off totally into left field about Armageddon.
Peter, wow, Peter. I mean, I thought I played too much D&D as a kid. But Peter Thiel, he's probably got a regular game going on with a who's who of global oligarchs and technocrats, and who knows who else.
I mean, D&D is funny because it's like a gateway, right? Is what they say. That my book, Galithog, the Gray's Field Guide to Anomalous Geometry, is inspired by this work and ET stuff and stuff, but it's actually inspired from playing D&D with my son. And so the idea was to make Galithog do flavor text in this book about anomalous body marks and evidence for UAPs and stuff like that. But that's why I think like that sense of imaginative play is actually a gateway. It was like I grew up fundamental Christian or whatever and afraid of D&D, and then now I play it, but I believe in every human's imagination capacity to navigate that realm themselves. Like it's not something you need to be afraid of. The sense of Peter Thiel, I had no idea about him before this Brown tweet. So that's really fascinating to me. I know there is a sense of moving toward using fundamentalism or even evangelism, evangelical Christianity in association with his work to do some sort of cultural something we don't know, right? Like there's a movement towards Christianity in Silicon Valley funded by someone who is there, right? And so when I see the work of Jesse Michaels be so obviously funded by Peter Thiel, at least in the beginning, and to see those connections between the Pasolka and in interest by Palantir employees in Pasolka's work, she's a religious scholar who went off and went with Gary Nolan to the donation fields, which is where the X-Files filmed the crash retrievals. And she had an experience where she went to the Vatican with all these guys, and now she's a convert, more or less. But the fact that it's all sort of spiraling around these people who are willing to establish narratives, religious control sort of thing is fascinating to me. And
she's a convert to what? What are you saying?
She went to have experiences with like Gary Nolan, and she believes in the phenomenon.
UFOs, so the phenomenon.
She wouldn't say it that way, but she uses the in language, ontological shock, that sort of thing. So she was accepted by all the content creator clique. That she got green lit by the gatekeepers of the disclosure movement or whatever to go to as high as you can go to talk about this, and that's I don't know, like Rogan or something. I don't know.
They're great books. I mean, they really are great books, but yeah. They're not. I mean, there are other great books out there too. It is odd that she did kind of right off the bat, like, got in the club.
Yep.
There's definitely some interests that are aligned with some pretty scary takes on religion that are involved at the top levels, though. I mean, I remember reading Chris Hedges' book American Fascists, which kind of outlines the dominionist takeover of parts of the Republican Party and the establishment. And, that could be an element of this as well, immanentizing the Eschaton, which is a little bit terrifying. But, yeah.
I'm curious about you're the person in this community that's receiving, like, you got the tweet, I watched your analytics, like, in part to understand how their analytics work, right? 1.5 million people saw the tweet. How many people came to your channel, right? Like, because I saw it trickle down on my work, and I was like, I got like, I don't know, like close to 1,000 views on one of my keywords with it. And I was like, God, that's a lot. But I saw you go, and I know that people are probably reaching out to you specifically to make sense of this. So you probably have the best understanding of anyone, right? Like in the world, right? Like what the UAP disclosure community's interest is in Enochian. How are people taking it? What are they asking you? Like, how are you engaging with it? How are you going to lead them? Like in this.
The church of Eleftheria is on its way.
Well, yeah, I don't know what to say to that, but yeah, I'll let you know what people are asking me when I have time to respond to the comments on my last couple of videos, because it's just been a lot of trying to organize podcast interviews and things like that. But I'm sure there'll be many questions and answers to come.
Are you very in demand all of a sudden?
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. You get what you ask for, because do you remember what you gently complained to me before the Matt Brown thing happened? Do you remember? I complimented you on the growth of your channel, and do you remember what you lamented?
That it's dying.
No,
it's dying.
You said no. You said, yeah, but have you seen where those people are all coming from? I'm like, well, the I don't work with demons anymore video, and you're like, yeah, exactly. So it's all these Christian people telling me good for you, or what's all these Satanists being like, they're your friends, you just didn't have the power to subdue them, right? So you're like, oh, all my viewers are and subs that was blowing me up into fame and fortune are coming from this weird demon Christian thing. Well, that's changed.
Yeah, well, that's good. Because I mean that video was starting to lose steam, and I think it was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And I think there's an element of that, and maybe something shadow banny going on, because I was starting to talk about some of the demented things that some powerful people are interested in. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I was going somewhere else with that. Oh yeah, one of the videos right before this whole thing blew up was me talking about how my channel was kind of slowing down, and it kind of saved me in a way. It was kind of like a lifeline for my platform. It'll turn out to be that in the long term, I think. So it's very good timing.
It could be worse, brother. Like you started your channel long after mine, and I was worried you might not grow because of my misfortune on the YouTubes, and that's my own fault. Essentially, my own fault, because I really went wild to attacking the whole lockdown coof narrative, because it affected me and my friends so severely, and lots died. And that got me, I'm super shadow banned. But hey, to say, at the same time, we have 44 people live watching us now. So that's even more than when Jason Liu was on my channel. Of course, the fallout from Jason Liu being on my channel was literally to lose permanently 80% of my audience. That's how much people don't like Jason Liu. Before Jason Liu, every podcast I did got 2,000-3,000 downloads at least. Since then, 300 max. Crazy, right? Crazy. I didn't think people hated him that much, but I guess I didn't know. I don't care. I don't care, because that's
what's sort of hate.
I'm sort of surprised.
Well,
I haven't been paying that much.
I'll let you discover. It's just I like people who are being honest and saying what they're thinking, and I listen to the idea that we need to all agree with everything each other says is ridiculous. I got shadow banned probably because I kept doing fake ads in the middle of my podcast. Like I would do fake ads for adrenochrome, like 2 for 1. Use code word Clinton at checkout. Yeah, that probably got me shadow banned. So but hey, that's why we're doing in-person events. Come to EnochiaCon.com. Booyah. Okay, silliness over. Back to some serious mind.
I just wanted to say I'm not going to comment on the positions Jason has taken, because I just don't want that kind of trouble in my life. But I will say that what's going on in the Middle East at the moment is also very related to some of the apocalyptic expectations of people in power, and there's been people drawing connections between the current Iran, Israel, Houthi conflict and the war of Gog and Magog that's predicted in the Bible. Chris Bledsoe talks about a war between Iran and Israel as kind of a precursor to some other divine revelation. So the sort of apocalyptic events in the Middle East tie into this whole thing as well. Which is a little bit terrifying, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually comment on that. Like my wheelhouse is theology. I am a priest. I did my Master's of Divinity at seminary out at UBC here. It's a big part of my fundamental worldview, and so I always look for people's theology, especially people in power. Right. My master's thesis in 2005 was inspired by George Bush being in charge and being like, we were attacked by these guys in Afghanistan, so we're going to bomb Iraq. And I was like, wait a second, why are you doing this? And he's like, because Jesus told me to. And I was like, all right, I'm no longer writing my master's thesis on Genesis 6:1-4. and the Nephilim. I just banged that out as a little paper instead, switched over to ethics and mysticism, and wrote my master's thesis on what does it mean when someone in power says, God told me to blow the shit out of this other country? What does that mean? So I went into psychoanalytic philosophy, ethics, and semiotics. And what interested me in the last 10 years was Mike Pence. Because, so when you look at an elected leader, who's giving, where are they getting their received opinions from? Look at their churches, look at who they listen to and who they believe in. Mike Pence really does believe, or really did believe at the time he was in power, and you can see this from the minister that he listened to. He believed that we needed nuclear war in the Middle East, specifically in Israel, so that Jesus Christ would return physically to prove that he was Lord and Savior. That's terrifying, right? Look at people's theology. And then, of course, people were like, well, at the time, this was Trump's first term. And they were like, well, do you think Trump thinks that too? I'm like, no, Trump's a whole other animal. From what I can tell, he went to a New Thought church, like a church where the minister was really into New Thought. So I actually think, believe it or not, and I'm just a wild, left coast Canadian, so don't take my word for it. But like, my read was like, oh, when he talks about the be all you can be, everyone can be great, we can all be billionaires. I think he actually believes that, because that's a very New Thought theology, right? I think that might be something he really does believe. For all the rest of him, and I can't analyze Trump or Pence or any of these guys, but like, look at their parish priest, look at their minister, look at their pastor, look at those theologies, and you're going to have a really good understanding of the undercurrent of why people think the way they do. So that's my 2 cents on that topic.
Yeah, it's a great point.
That's why it's such a pleasure to speak with Frater Eleftheria in the context of the Matthew Brown tweet. That's what I get to, where I go, okay, there's some looking toward that. In terms of the significance, right? The 666 and the end of the age sort of thing. You were talking about immanentizing the Eschaton. That's a powerful phrase, but that's actually isn't that part of the political agenda of some of the people who have opposed UAP disclosure works? They talk about Collins Elite. I'm not sure what that is exactly, but there's supposedly a segment that of the funders of congressional programs that are evangelical and afraid that aliens are demons or something like that. But the whole question, right, is is the apocalypse, is Enochian and apocalypse working, right, to bring the end of the age? Did Jack Parsons actually do it, or is it to make us mystics, right? What is it, right? And so depending on your theology, the revelation of a Borimon could mean the end of the world is here, and that next year nuclear war is going to happen. I don't know. And so when I think about that in the context of someone who's named a company after Palantir, right, who is willing to fight with the spirit of Sauron, right, for the good of Middle Earth, right, where is that dynamic happening, and what is that theology that's guiding them? So that's why I'm hoping, right, that there's some cracks through that light and love and light and life or whatever can come through that sort of aura of those who understand this working to be a revelation of the veil. That insight needs to come forward, I suppose, rather than it's literally going to nuclear war or something.
Well, Dee's interest, I mean, in terms of what is the end game with the Enochian system, that's going to change with each person who's working with it. But for Dee, it was pretty base. I mean, his goal with talking to angels was that he believed that angels ruled certain sections of airspace, and where that airspace touched the ground, that angel ruled that country. So if he could get in touch with the angel that ruled over Germany, he could spy on Germany for Elizabeth. He could influence Germany. And when it wasn't something like that, it was where's the treasure buried? I mean, over and over in the diaries, he's looking. He wants to know where the treasure is, because they're not paying him shit to do what he's doing. But again, what he's doing is so outside of the realm of espionage, but in his mind, this is the ultimate espionage, you know. But in terms of governmental application, you could see how if you adopted his worldview, there is a purpose to which Enochian magic can be lent, and it is the original purpose.
I work far more with the airs than with the aethers, and by that I mean the parts of the earth rather than traveling them astrally, which was originally the Golden Dawn method of working with the Enochian airs or aethers. And I think it's a fascinating avenue to be explored in regards to remote viewing, right? Aside from the whole getting the angels to help people or govern the prince or influence princes or kings or rulers. Is this whole remote viewing aspect that could be tied to the airs that I think is unexplored and interesting. I want to say I really appreciate someone's comment about Teilhard de Chardin. I'm a big fan of Teilhard de Chardin. He was a Catholic priest. I don't know if all of you know. So you know him, PD. Eleftheria and Dan, do you know who Teilhard de Chardin was?
I know I've enough that I've had books of his, and I know I should respect him. I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. So
is this the Omega Point guy?
Yeah, and what interests me is his idea that there would be this sphere around the earth, this noosphere, N-O-O sphere around the earth, and we would be able to communicate instantaneously with each other through it. So he was a Jesuit priest at the turn of the century, 100 years ago. And I mean, I guess he had visions or prophecies, and some of them seem to have been absolutely dead on. And it makes you think about that stuff. And one of my most successful practices in my magical life, shockingly to me, has been in the realm of prophecies and predictions. Like, I wish that I could lift things with my mind or something heavier than something light. But most of my most shocking results have been in seeing things that my friends put too much stock in it. Let's say I'm accurate enough often that my friends put too much stock in it. Put less stock in it, guys. But yeah, I guess I'm sorry if I'm right a lot. So the airs are fascinating. The airs are fascinating and unexplored, I think, in that sense, because we often, since Crowley's great adventure in Vision, the Voice, traveling the aethers, and we've all kept doing that, and that's a GD thing that became an OTO-AA thelemic thing, and it's a great way to use them. It's a powerful way to use them. But the using them in the traditional fashion, I think, is underestimated. And hopefully we can see that develop more, especially with Scott Michael Stenwick finally putting out a book on how to do that and work with them using the heptarchic method of standing on the seals. So that's really interesting. It's going to be an interesting future for sure on that count. Let's... Who wants to? We'll get ChatGPT to write the proposal to get us $1 million so we can get funding, guys. Would you take $250 each to do this monthly, and Peter Thiel will just fund put the bill? We'll just shoot the shit about all this stuff. That would be great. Let's do it. We can make it happen. Get sponsors for Enochian Con. See, I've been busy trying to get local psychedelic shops to sponsor the conference. Should have been reaching out to the Zuck and the Thiel and the Musk and whoever else. Bigelow. I'm actually very fascinated by Bigelow. I'm very fascinated by Bigelow. You and me talked about him, Mr. Rekshan, on our last little podcast. We talked about him a lot, but he's done amazing things. If anyone hasn't looked, like he does competitions, he does a lot of funding. I want to go into details, but once I start doing that, I know that it's gonna go off the rails. So we'll do that another time. Hopefully it would be great to do a round 2 of this, this would be a great thing to do again a year from now and reflect on what's happened in the meantime, but the time is flying and I'm having a lot of fun. And it is great. Someone mentioned it is great to see an Aussie from down under get into our little Northern Hemisphere scene. And yeah, brother, I look forward to getting you up here in person. Maybe we can find a way to get you to EnochiaCon next year in the States in person, or the year after that in Prague. Yeah, that would be great to meet you and get that handsome mug in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, someday. Yeah.
Someday. You're not opposed to
Who
flying,
knows?
right? It's safest way
No.
to travel. Or it was.
Yeah. Who knows what the world's going to look like in a year's time or 2 years? But yeah, I'd love to get to the Northern Hemisphere.
We may have teleporters. We have a serious question for you, perhaps, Frater. This is the great debate between GD and AA systems. And AA, of course, you guys know what that means. It's not Alcoholics Anonymous. In your opinion, would you start with Tex, the 30th Aether, or Lil? Traditionally, Crowley started with Tex, and maybe that's how Mathers taught him to do it, because the paper on astral traveling the Aethers was written by Mathers. Then it was lost. We know it existed because it's mentioned in all the GD members' diaries. Like Mathers wrote a paper, an instructional on each of the systems: the 7 days of creation for the Heptarchia system, traveling the 30 Aethers in the spirit vision, and the watchtowers. But only the watchtower papers survived, unless there's some private temples out there with copies of the originals, which is very possible. So the idea fundamentally is, if you travel from Tex, the spheres or the Aethers expand out from the physical universe, the double cubical altar or the sphere of Malchut. And you would start with Tex is the thinking, and go up to Lil, where you would experience the ultimate state of physical reality. Now the other alternating approach would be you start with Lil, and that comes from the Hecalot practice of the Merkava, where you start with the highest Kether conception of the highest point, formulate that conception of what that divine is, and then successively bring it down into manifestation into yourself and in your own world. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this, since you've done a lot more, actually, I think, of traveling the Aethers than I have?
Yeah, well, I think there's no need to be dogmatic with these things, I think, because the angels themselves, gave new information all the time to D and Kelly about different ways of doing things. So I think whatever works best based on, I guess, your own cosmology. When I explored the Aethers, I did do the more hermetic technique of starting from the earth and going up. But if I were to do it again today, having read a lot of Aaron Leach and had a look into some of Justin Sledge's fantastic research into Hecalot literature and that kind of method of descent rather than ascent, I'd probably start from the top and work my way down, or the second from the top and work my way down, and then go to the very top on the final day of working to sort of go through all of them. But I think it depends what works for you. But I've got my own biases. I've been kind of, before the UAP stuff blew up, I was digging into a lot of the sort of ancient Jewish mystical practices that may have influenced Enochian, and getting interested in that. So, and I think that's quite an important kind of influence on the Enochian system, because the books of Enoch, I think, are very thematically related to Enochian magic. So that is my long-winded response about how I would work the Aethers and in what order.
Great answer, and not too long-winded at all. We usually talk about just that topic for many hours. Christian Simon says Lil would be the more theurgic way. Would it? Because maybe it would be, drawing down from above would elevate you, would cause theosis, but also working upwards, wouldn't that cause you to shed? I don't know. This is a good question for you, actually, Frater, because when you're working up from texts, do you find that to be theurgic or not?
Yeah, well, it's certainly it does feel like working your way up to finer and finer levels of the heavens. Uh, and I think when I had my vision of Lil, uh, there wasn't much there. It was a lot of just silence and stillness and almost like a vision of like a white void, and sort of being poured out into that. Um, so yeah, if your goal is to kind of have that gradual kind of shedding of the different, shall we say, influences of the archons, to borrow from Gnosticism, yeah, that does seem like that there's merits in that method as well.
One thing people should realize is any serious practitioner, like with at all the mentality of an occult scientist, is going to try these things all multiple times and every which way they can, and compare and make notes. It's kind of what we do. It's our jazz.
I think an interesting thing to try would be to do the 49-day Gebethel ritual and make it coincide with the counting of the Omer, the Jewish 50-day opening of the gates of Binah, and really start to treat those things as they're the same. Be interesting to see what happens there.
Absolutely. So we have some time left because we're all having a great time, and it's great to have 45 people watching live. That even exceeds what I had with Mr. Lou. Thank you, everybody. I know we're co-streaming on your channel, which is an honor. It's an honor. I've been following you since the get-go, Frater. I came for the hair and I stayed for the wisdom. It's been great to watch you, to get to know you without knowing you. And actually, for fun fact, we actually have a friend in common. You worked magically with a former student of mine. So there was this very, very famous guy in Canada who had a very bad experience with the OTO in Toronto and called up my Temple of Tahuti in the Golden Dawn Order in Vancouver and left a message. The other adepts disregarded the message because they didn't know who he was. I recognized who he was because he was the singer in my favorite band. His name is Jeff Martin, or the Captain, as we call him, of the famous Canadian band, The Tea Party, which the first album is Splendor Soulless. The second album is peppered with Solomonic diagrams, and he's an amazing singer. He's like a mixture of Jimmy Page crossed with Jim Morrison. And it's been a pleasure to get to know him over the years as he reached out to us in our Golden Dawn Temple. He now, of course, after he moved, he and I moved to Ireland at the same time. And then he moved to Australia after reuniting the Tea Party, where he met you.
That's right. Yeah.
Amazing. So cool. Like, how cool is that? I'm sorry. Jeff Martin, if you ever see this, God bless you, sir. Much appreciated. He then brought his wife. He then married a priestess in the OTO and the GC and lives in Byron Bay or someplace like that. I probably shouldn't say, though I don't think it's private knowledge. And he came to Vancouver, and I got to meet her. And when he introduced her to me, she did the thing I've had done to me many times by a new magician, which is she reached out and just put her hands on my head. And I just closed my eyes and opened myself up fully because I got nothing to hide. And then she smiled, and that was how I met his new wife. She was lovely. He's lovely. And yeah, it's so cool that you got to you worked in the same lodge with him, and we have that connection. Though I will say I'm flabbergasted that the Tea Party is not your favorite band. You're going to have to explain yourself someday, or I'll have to strap you to a chair and Clockwork Orange you until you love them.
Yeah, have to listen more to the Tea Party and less to the dark ambient playlists that were kind of the background music for some of my preparation for my earlier Enochian workings.
Absolutely. And yeah, and Justin from 3 Inches of Blood is a dear friend and close collaborator of mine here locally. Come to Enochian. He'll be working the security with my 6'5" ex-truck driver driving friend named Lola. So you'll meet some very cool people if you come to Vancouver. Yeah, stay tuned. Me and Justin are going to release a lot more music, especially now that he's won a Juno Award last week. So, let's plaster that award all over every track we can from here to Kingdom Come. So we have some more time. I'm still curious about orbs and light things in the sky. I'm still fascinated by that. I'm fascinated because in temples, sometimes when you see manifestations, you see what seems like balls of light that aren't illuminating anything, but they're there. I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by the whole craft thing, the biologics thing, but I don't know enough about it. I also don't think we have much evidence about it. I'm just trying to sort of channel the audience here. People, if you're listening, just open your minds up. I'll see if I can channel your conundrums and questions, and I'll just try and flow them out to these guys because there's so much to talk about and so much that's interesting. Is there anything that the three of you find especially of interest in all of this brouhaha?
I'm sort of interested in, I mean, this brouhaha seems to me to reveal a number of things. I'm interested in PD Newman, your work with DMT and the D and things like that seems really relevant. In my own personal experience with Enochian, I went from that presentation to actually perform a CE5. I mentioned this last time, a CE5 with one of my clients who has orb experiences like the ones we talk about. In my experience, I've seen stuff with him, but all of that stuff resolved sort of into this like time loopy thing caused by a DMT experience or whatever. Like, I swear to God, that was the mechanism. I opened myself to CE5 and a spirit came in and gave me some inspiration, but that to me resolved into something like the DMT experience was like, I used my lucid dreaming practice from all last summer and things like that to go through it. And there was this sort of time loopy thing that I've been tracking in my work. It relates to remote viewing. There's been signs and synchronicities that reveal it to me. And so in that way, there's like, for instance, right, in the transition between the Kona Blue proposal and whatever happened next, there was a single paper that seemed to reveal what they were doing. And that's like dream telepathy to contact aliens. That's really what I think happened in the Journal of Cosmology. There was a paper that was released by a physicist who was informed by Hal Puthoff and Kit Green and blah, blah, blah. Physicist named Michael Ibsen. I talked to him. He worked on a project associated with the John Mack Institute, who's an abduction researcher, who's funded by billionaires as well, Bigelow being one of them. And he was working on a project about time symmetry. That's all he would talk about is time symmetry or whatever. And at the same time, I had another guy who was telling me from a kind of intuitive point around time symmetry, backwards and forwards in time, and how that can manifest or create a manifestation of this like light that casts no shadows, like you mentioned. So for me, when I'm tracking all of this, I'm seeing the individuals in play and things like that, and some of the actual threads. And one of the threads is through the researcher Dale Groff, who did research on precognitive dreams or whatever, and is associated with Stargate. There's all these threads that tell me there's something involving the ritual invocation of a function outside of linear time, and it associates with teleological causes that express through loops of time, which is why the missing time experience and the missing time regression session seem to relate to the revelation of information about entities and orbs. That for me is what's at stake. And I don't know if I have just spouted out like schizophrenic word salad to all y'all, or if y'all are tracking it, but I think someone out there is tracking something similar, and I think it's coming through the zeitgeist. And so I see these tendrils happening. It makes me very curious, very excited. That's all.
We have a question for PD and a super chat. Thank you everyone who's super chatted. Helps support this live streaming software, which is fun. Lets us play commercials, and oh boy, am I going to make some fun commercials. Oh yeah, we got some plans to make some fun ones. You thought I was edgy with the adrenochrome fake commercials? You got not. You wait till I see. Once you're already shadow banned, you may as well just go wild, right? Just go for it. So before I get to the question for PD, I want to talk about what Daniel has said here, because I didn't find that schizophrenic at all. What do you guys think?
No, I mean I mean what we're trying to describe is it's quite trippy, and I think you did a good job of outlining it. Yeah.
All right, let's do the. Oh, go for it, PD. Go.
Oh no, that was me. I was just going to say, in terms of my reaction with the light beings and all of that, what I really would like to get to the bottom of, or somebody to get to the bottom of, is, are these things biblical angels? Like, was Immaculate Conception called? Sorry, Freudian slip. Was Immaculate Constellation called that because it was a reference to an event in the Bible that involved a light guiding some shepherds? And is there much more religious connection, an ancient connection to this phenomenon than anybody realized? And is the disclosure event also, as much as it's about extraterrestrial intelligence, also about humanity learning that angels exist? And what are the theological implications of that? That, to me, is an intriguing idea, because I know Chris Bledsoe has that opinion of what these light orbs are, or
so
something.
In other words, was Jesus
in a similar vein?
So was Jesus an alien?
Was he? Don't know.
I mean,
was he a starseed?
I mean, was he a starseed? Was he the original starseed? I mean, Ilhasa 7 says words like actual and reality are a lot slippier than we might think. I don't think anyone here is going to disagree with that. Absolutely. Also, Ilhasa says native ceremonials tend to be palindromic rather than the highly sexualized Western apocalyptic teleologies. Yeah, that's interesting. So thank you very much, Christian Salmons, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Bless your heart. We need it to keep this stuff going. And here is your question for the great and mighty PD Newman. Have you had any experience with Salvia? Because I have some very profound experiences back in 2012 and only started to understand it when discovering the occult. That's a story we've heard before. Yeah.
I have done virtually every psychedelic compound, and Salvia is by far the strangest fucking thing I've ever encountered. It's far stranger than DMT, and DMT is strange. But yeah, so when people talk about hallucinating, usually with something like LSD or mushrooms, you're not hallucinating in that you're seeing something that's not there and you mistake it for real. You know that it's usually some kind of a geometric something that's emerging out of the matrix of activity that's brought on by the psychedelic. But Salvia is nothing at all like that. And I used to get the 40-time potency back when it was still legal. And I had a couple of really memorable experiences with it. My wife too. But once I took it, and have you ever read Chuang Tzu, old Chinese Taoist author? He's the one that says, am I a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or am I a butterfly dreaming that I'm a man? In the Salvia trip, I was a Mexican dude in like the 1800s plowing a field with this ox in front of me, and there was this pueblo in the distance, and I knew that my wife and daughter were in there, and I was really hungry, and I knew that I was like waiting for the dinner bell because I knew that would mean supper was done and I could stop plowing this field and go home. And this went on for hours, it seemed like. And then when I came down and was back in my body, sitting in the living room of my friend's house, I couldn't figure out where I was. Mentally, I was still this Mexican farmer for several minutes. And then gradually it was like, oh, I was on Salvia. It was literally like skipping dimensions. And so, yeah, I've done Salvia, and the occult implications of what it can do will make your head spin.
You have some yeah, that 40x is someone is mentioning. That's a lot. I tried to do salvia once, but it was old and dry, and the guy said if I did enough of it, it would work. But by the time nothing happened, and by the time I had burned out my throat, and I was like, dude, this is not on. And he was like, well, just keep doing more. I was like, dude, no, this is brutal. I'll have to come visit you and do it properly, Frater. So someone says something interesting. I love trolling. So are you wasting your time here? Someone says you're wasting your time here, Frater. Are you wasting your time here?
Is that directed to me, or there's two Fraters here?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're that's directed at you.
This is the last thing that I would consider a waste of my time. I mean, I wish I could be doing this all the time. All the mundane things that we have to do to get by in this world. And no, this is it for me. This is great. This has been great.
Peter Thiel, if you're watching, fund us. Doesn't take much. Just like a little, get 0.2%. Give us a little cheddar. We'll talk about this all day. We'll build a commune. We'll all do it full on, like, Church of All Worlds style. Giddy up. Yeah. We're trying to have fun also. It's July 4th. We've all been working our butts off all year to save up for taxes, and we're trying to have fun. So I do appreciate the silly comments, the trolling comments. It's all good. Let's just remember how serious what we're talking about is. This is how serious what we're talking about is, okay? This is a serious subject matter that needs to be taken without any humor, any comedy, and you got to be serious if you want to talk about this subject matter at all. That came to me in a dream. I was like, how am I going to start off this meme war with you, Frater? And that came to me as I was falling asleep. I woke up and I made it because I remembered it, but I know how I can improve it now. Now I can improve it by taking this head, the lamb head, and putting it on the green alien's head. Am I right? That'll be even better, right?
Yeah, sure. But no, it's great. The troll comments, it's a test to make sure that we really are dissolving the ego and that we're not full of ourselves as occultists. So it's great. Keep them coming.
It seems like most of the chat gets the role of the essential role of humor in human existence. So praise be to Yalda Baoth. What else do we want to talk about? We've been going far longer than I expected to be honest. If anyone in the chat has any last questions, super chat them now, because we are heading toward the end game here on this beautiful Friday evening, Saturday day for you, right?
Yep, it's just about lunchtime for me.
Just about lunchtime. Yeah. And I agree. Lull the demiurge. Lull it until it can't be lulled anymore. Hallelujahs. Yeah. I do want to say, like, do you guys think we're going to get any further understanding? Like, the sphere that's been captured, is that U.S. military, that sphere? Any chance?
The Booga sphere?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See,
does
that's
anyone
what I
else
love
want
about
to
you.
answer that one?
You know the most about this stuff, but you're also in some ways the most skeptical about this stuff, and that's why I love you, Daniel.
Okay. These are the reasons, because you look down. So this is, if you're curious about U.S. disclosure, what is actually happening, go look to see what they're doing in the Mexican Congress with Jaime Maussan, and like you'll get people going there from the U.S., from the English speaking worlds, and there is a back and forth. And that's one of the things that was said about Greer, was that he took a lot of his practice from the Rama network, was a sort of telepathic contactee network down from I did like a 24-week introduction with Canadian ones from Latin America that were doing it online in COVID times. So the thing is about that is they bring forward things that are, in my opinion, sort of less. They're like less. They're like ambiguous, but there's a ceremony of presentation of these things that seem like doll magic to me, to be honest. And you can see that actually playing out when for me, when I'm not necessarily engaged with the language or the culture, and just looking at the outward trappings of the ceremony of presentation of things like the Bugosphere or the mummies and things like that to the Mexican Congress, and you can see the interactions between. And for me, stepping back, I go, this is pageantry. It's not in ceremonial magic. That's why I'm interested in what you guys have to say about it, because this is actually ceremonial magic more than a revelation of objective truth. And I know that because I track these things around objective claims for very specific times that the claims matter, like the Bledsoe's claim that the UFO of God film at the Monroe Institute was a UFO. I'm tracking that. And so if you track those down, it's sort of this pageantry thing, and they're not actually doing science on it. At least I haven't looked in the Bugosphere, but it looks sort of like that to me. And at the end of the day, if it looks like a hoax and feels like a hoax to you, it is a hoax. And to me, all of these things feel like they've taken something that's anomalous that sets you in this motion of, is it real, is it not? And they're weaponizing or manipulating that state of moving between the poles. Is it real, is it not? Keeping us in this state of, is it real, is it not? We've been doing this and having whiplash for about 5 years, and we're exhausted. And so now there's a next phase of that manipulation. And so I'm going, what is that? We've been taken on a ride, at least a small group of people that you can estimate the size of by looking at Frater Eleftheria's analytics, right? We know how many people, like we can estimate how many people are responding to this upward funnel of a sort of Rosicrucian sort of facade thing that's happening. And so all of this, are we going to get the truth about that or not? We're not. We're never going to do that. We're going to be moved from one funnel.
You always say that.
To another, right? Like, so I guess,
you always are like,
right?
You're exploring all these mysteries, and then at the end, you're always like, and we're never going to know. We'll never know. They'll never let us know. No chance. We won't find out, but we have to try and wonder. I love that about you, man. It's like, that's the paradox Crowley's always talking about. It's like, we have to wonder, we have to seek for the truth, but we'll never find out.
So this is literally the message Galathog gave to me. Like, I studied body marks. I was like, there's got to be evidence for alien abduction. It's in the body marks. And so he started, like, angel, whatever. Galathog is, for me, a complex of whatever. It's inspired stuff. It's fun a little bit for me, but it was this sense of, what are all these body marks meaning? Because orbs, like we talk about, leave physical evidences on people's bodies that they go, like, there's an orb that doesn't cast light, and it went into my body, and now there's a triangle, and that triangle is on almost every abductee ever. Oh my God, right? Like, and what does that mean? What does that mean? And the insight for me was balancing irrationality and rationality in a geometric form. And that told me, like, I'm never going to know. And so it's in the practice of being in the non-duality with it is the solution to the conundrum that they're presenting. But it gets me worked up all the time. So thanks for letting me vent some of that to you guys.
I love it. I love it, brother. I love it. So, and it's great to have you. You're on your way. I'll be seeing you for the first time in person this Friday here in Vancouver, because you're an American, but we kidnapped you.
Thanks.
We didn't even need ICE to do it for us. We just sent one of our fine lasses down to America, and she brought you back and stole us for you in British Columbia. I mean, you're a little ways out of town, not far. It's a short drive for Canada. How many hours from Vancouver to where you live? About? It's just a quick little drive.
says it's 7.5, but since I have
Yeah,
children
yeah,
in there, it will
yeah.
be about
It's like-
17.5.
So that's like halfway to Calgary, to our next city. That's for people who don't realize how big Canada is. We're big. We're very big. We're the biggest. We're so big. You'll never believe it. You drive for 9 hours and you're like halfway to the next city. It's wild. So here's a Merlin Shock. Thank you for the super chat. It really does make a difference. Everyone always says that, but it really does. The streaming software is fun and exciting and expensive. Any thoughts comparing Amanita to DMT? And actually, this is a topic that I love talking about because both have affected, for me, each other's use. So the floor is yours, good sir.
Me? Are you talking to me?
Yeah, the question is for you from Merlin Shocked. I thought they addressed it to you. Any thoughts comparing Amanita to DMT? Oh, actually, maybe there's another super chat that I missed. Someone asking a similar thing. I thought they addressed it to you. My bad. I thought they addressed
it wasn't
to you.
addressed to me, but I'm glad to respond. They are vastly different compounds. The DMT is a serotonergic. It works with your serotonin syndrome, your serotonin centers in your brain. But the Amanita has muscimol in it, which works with the GABA centers in your body. Alcohol works with GABA centers. So and the effects change with the dosage. So small doses tend to have alcohol-like effects and can make you sleepy. But as you up the dose, you definitely start to enter what could be called visionary territory, although the visions are nothing like serotonergic visions. They can be somewhat delirious, and if you are lucky, they can take on the quality of entering kind of this mind at large space, even though it's not populated with patterns and beings and things like that. So I find them vastly different territories.
I've heard some people can be concerned that if they did DMT before they did psilocybin, that the DMT would change the way they experience psilocybin into more rigid, angular, and fractal shapes, and they would lose the opportunity to experience psilocybin in the more flowy way. Again, we have to use weird language to describe it.
You only have so many receptors, and if they're two serotonergics, your receptors are going to be occupied by the one that you did first, and the other is just not going to do anything for you. It's not like there's a waiting room until the receptors are freed up. So like if you smoke DMT on psilocybin, when you take it, your body converts it into psilocin, and psilocin chemically is 4-phosphoryloxy-N,N-dimethyltryptamine. So it's nature's orally active DMT without the need of an MAOI like with ayahuasca. So if you take psilocybin first and then you smoke DMT, which I've done many times, but you will never blast off. I got up to 9 hits I took the night my youngest son was conceived. And never blasted off. I ended up on some planet with a dome, and there was a brain in it, and there were snakes and a goat chewing snakes. Like that shit happened, but there was no blast off. I was still always in my bathroom on the floor tripping. Now with LSD, it's different for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I think with the psilocybin, they're both DMT, and I think once the receptors are occupied, it's like you make a hole with the first dose, and then every dose after that just falls through the hole.
So it never occurred to me in a million years, despite the fact that I live in Vancouver, where you can buy DMT, 2CB, peyote, psilocybin. You can get psilocybin sodas at the corner store. You can buy all those other drugs over the counter just a block from my house and at many other shops around town. You can go in and get a DMT vape for $100. You can just, it's all okay. It never occurred to me to do DMT while I was on anything else, which again proves I'm not a real psychonaut, just at best a dabbler, though. I think that's, I try to explore it more, but my body has limits. And I think people should be aware that when we talk about this stuff, listen to your body, pay attention, obviously never break the law. That would be wrong. Never break the law at all in any way, shape, or form. And obviously none of us here have ever done any form of drug at all. We're just talking hypothetically. And but so what happens when you're on? Why do you think psilocybin prevents a DMT breakthrough?
I think it occupies the receptors is really only. I can't figure out any other reason. But with LSD, it's fantastic. It's phenomenal. It prolongs it. So, and it's more gentle. As weird as that sounds, because with blasting off with DMT from baseline, it's abrasive. The sensation is like your soul is being ripped out of your body, and nothing about it feels pleasant. But if you take it on when you're already on LSD, you get to a good peak, and then take it. It's more like you're already on the top of the mountain. Now you're just going to hop a little bit. There's no abrasion to it. It's smooth, and it lasts so much longer.
That's interesting. I'm going to try that hypothetically, not for real.
The last time I did that was on Bicycle Day in 2015. I was on my patio. There was this gnarly thunderstorm. It was purple lightning everywhere. And I got struck by fucking lightning out there on my patio. Not directly, it was rebound lightning. It struck this tree, and then it struck me. And I was full on out of my body. And at the time, I didn't know I'd been struck by lightning. I thought, this is the most wild DMT shit I've ever experienced. But when I came down, my wife is there, and so you've been struck by lightning.
I'm glad you're still with us. Absolutely.
Oh, me too. But there's a moral, just don't do it on a second floor next to a tree when there's purple lightning bolts.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys who have reached out to me who are also like Brother Masons as well, have told me many stories, and I've talked to a few of them on the phone, though. And so they said they might come on the podcast. But what they're doing is they're charting DMT hyperspace, right? I'm sure you're aware of this research going on, right? And what they're doing is they're smoking an MAO inhibitor before they smoke the DMT, so that the trip lasts, instead of 5 to 10 minutes, for like 6 to 8 hours. And they're playing frequencies and over headphones in their head, a specific frequency, a singular frequency. And they've noticed that the reason these researches started is because they noticed that when they play at the same frequency as someone else, they go to the same place. To me, that's wild. But apparently they have databases, and they're doing hundreds. And so, like, when I say I'm not a psychonaut, obviously I'm not even a baby psychonaut. I've done DMT less than 50 times, but these guys, a lot of people have done it hundreds of times, and the real psychonauts have done it thousands of times. There's people out there who have really spent 6 to 8 hours in hyperspace. One guy told me that multiple times he's been in another place, lived an entire lifetime there over his 8-hour trip, inhibited trip. And when he comes back, he's like, oh my God, my wife and my kids and everything there. It's like, like a sci-fi show. It's like, it's not real, or it was real, but I'm back. Oh my God. And I said to him, what's it like doing those MAO inhibited trips where you're there for 8 hours in hyperspace in this one place based on this one frequency? And I said, what's that like? He said, it's always traumatic. And I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense. Probably not going to do that myself. Maybe once or twice, but we'll see. Life is long. What's your thoughts on the charting of DMT hyperspace?
No, I think it's absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be just DMT. I've had multiple experiences with other people on both LSD and mushrooms where we were having the same exact visions. We were able to discuss them to a T, be surprised by them changing simultaneously. I mean, we're in the same space. And that may have had something to do with the music. You know, when you mentioned they're playing a tone, one of the most common effects of these types of drugs is the induction of synesthesia, that you're seeing sound. So if they're playing the same tone, it makes sense. That's why the Icaros function, the ayahuasca songs that the shamans sing to others while they're on ayahuasca, because the song itself is a map. It takes them somewhere, and the song alters the visual perception of the terrain. You know, so I do think it can be mapped. Yet I'm skeptical, and I think what's really being mapped is the visual perception of sound and other sensations that are being perceived as visual stimuli. But I also suspect that these are real places. That's why I have such a problem with the word hallucinogen. I don't mind psychedelic. Psychedelic comes from two Greek words, psyche, or soul, mind, and delos, to manifest. And I don't take the psychological approach in that interpretation. I see soul as a very real space that can be occupied. And you're projecting that outwards onto this environment and exploring self as other. I like that. You know, I like entheogen. But I'm prone, mainly from my work with magic and ritual, that when I encounter these symbols, I interpret them as objective phenomena, indicating something other, some other territory that I'm being shown or that I've encountered, mainly because those symbols can be manipulated, and there are real-time results in this world. I don't know how many people work with it that way, but that's how I work with it. And that's how I suspect Dee and Kelly were working with it. Kelly's red powder was DMT. And I mean, you'd have to hear my whole lecture to hear why I say that with such confidence. But
people can hear it at EnochiaCon 2024, available as a full course of study. Sign up at arcaneresearchsociety.com. Hear PD's wonderful 2-hour course and lecture on that. And the funds do go to the presenters of the conference. We're building a mystery here, folks, like my fellow Vancouver musician Sarah McLachlan once sang. We are building a mystery. Absolutely. She's doing great work in town with low-income kids, and like gives them in-person lessons in her music studio. Really awesome person. So before the super chat question, here's a setup for that. Ihasa 7, thank you. Puharik started with Amanita research around 1953, but I don't get the impression Leary had any interest in this stuff. Is that true? It seems like Puharik stuck with the Amanita into the 60s. I turn that over to our senior psychedelic correspondent, PD Newman.
Yeah, Leary didn't take much interest in Amanitas at all, outside of being familiar with the history of the research. I mean, people like R. Gordon Wasson and John M. Allegro, you know, and granted, Allegro's a little bit later, he's in the 70s, but he was talking his smack a lot earlier than that. But yeah, they were interested in it for very different reasons. Puharich was contacting he had a psychic, and this guy Harry Stone, that he was also an artist, and this woman wanted him to see this pendant that had belonged to the mother of Akhenaten. And as soon as he takes it, he goes into this trance and starts speaking in Egyptian, but nobody understands him. And so they give him a pencil and paper, and he starts writing in Old Kingdom hieroglyphs. And this is a time when nobody can read hieroglyphs except a handful of people in the whole country. And Puharich takes it to one of them and says, can you read this? He doesn't tell them where it came from, but they're like, oh, yes, this is Old Kingdom. This means this. And it's all about a mushroom, a plant that can cause the soul to separate from the body. And that they were using it for practical purposes like surgery, because if someone had to go through surgery, they'd give them the drug to separate their soul out so they could work on the body and they wouldn't feel pain. And then afterwards, the soul goes back in and their body's fixed, and then go about their business. That's what Puharich was up to. Leary would have had no interest in that. Leary's coming from the Tibetan Book of the Dead and Eastern models of enlightenment and Atman, things like that. Leary's not into Egypt at all, I don't think, in anything I've read.
Someone asked, super chatted the question about bilocation and Amanita. Any thoughts on bilocation from anyone here?
Outside of separation of soul from the body and those being two locations?
Anyone appeared in two places at once? A clarifying question is very welcome in that regard to the super chatter. Thank you for that. So if you have a clarifying question, we'll put it on screen and address it. But yeah, what is meant by bilocation is very complicated and could have many different possibilities. So yeah, was the sacred mushroom sanitized? That's someone's question.
Sanitized.
I don't know why they would have had reason to sanitize it. Like they were already going countercultural by writing that book, weren't they? Putting their life and career at risk.
Not Puharich. The government had hired him to get into this shit.
Oh, okay. So why would he sanitize
psychic research?
Yeah, so there's no reason to sanitize it. It's like when people think in our traditions that there's like all these blinds in the Golden Dawn traditions. Like these were initiated lessons for initiates. Like there's no blinds in them. They're given to people in secret, and they're written very clearly because you're meant to understand them and then be tested on them. So there's no blinds in that stuff. Yeah, sanitize. There's no reason to sanitize that stuff. Yeah. So the clarification of the bilocation question is, yes, being in two locations such that you know where the other eye is and vice versa. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Have any of you had an experience where there's two separate eyes that you're aware of yourself existing in two separate locations? For me, that experience has happened, actually. That has happened whenever I've done really good astral travel journeys or whenever often on DMT. So like when I was at Stonehenge in 1997, I did an automatic writing session, and then I lay down in the grass far away so that no one could see me. My body sank into the tall grass that was there at the time. And I astral traveled into Stonehenge and then into the rocks, and a very clear impression of me being there, but also here. That if you do astral travel right, you really do have this sense of there and here. And the only other time I've ever had that experience is on DMT.
I often think about the bilocation as perhaps the mechanism by which the orbs manifest. So one of the hypotheses here, people say contact is contact with the self, but like when the orbs or light beings are manifesting, who is actually manifesting there? And in dream studies, in astral projection, right? Like astral projection, you have the literal experience of bilocation, but the lucid dreaming, as taught to me by the entities and not the lucid dream researchers, reveal like, hey, actually the awareness is in the body sleeping. That is the fundamental characteristic of lucid dreaming, is that the awareness is embodied first and foremost, and also present with the unfolding dream. So this is how realities are constructed kind of. So there's a 2-layer thing happening with the lucid dream awareness. Now, given the sense of like remote viewing or astral projection and things like that, there are some people that suggest that there's some lore, right, that the projected double can manifest as a wraith or a luminous body, right? Like, so the question for me is then, are these luminous beings or orbs bilocated beings, right? Like bilocated entities who are visiting us? And then if that's the case, are they actually angels or aliens, or are they ourselves from the future who have figured out some of these things kind of bilocating back because, I don't know, we need guidance from a ritual and we're calling in wisdom from our higher selves or guardian angels or whatever? And so I think for me, that question of bilocation is a natural human tendency, right? And so for me, I see cases like the Amy Rylance case where there was the body mark, where there was the manifestation of orb light, where there were 2 or 3 different things happening in terms of the actual reported lived experience, but it looked as if there was a teleportation and bilocation experience happening. So oftentimes I think that perhaps bilocation is a step to teleportation, and that alien abduction kind of mixes that all up with naturally proficient bilocators, and they just don't know that they're doing it to themselves because of the overwhelming quality of the narrative of the other and the disempowerment we experience when we talk about UAP disclosure or the psyops or whatever. And so that for me is a really powerful question about the bilocation in this context.
Yeah. Well, I might just share my own thoughts on bilocation as well. So I have had an experience in the past of something like bilocation, which did seem to be connected to astral projection, the separation of the body and the spirit. I was not conscious that I was doing it. I probably would have been asleep when it happened. But the reason why I found out that I'd had this experience was because one of my early kind of followers on Instagram, who was a lady from Arizona, told me that she had been going through some kind of process. I think she was at maybe a sweat lodge or something like that, her own spiritual kind of journey, and she'd seen somebody that looked like me kind of appearing before her and telling her to seek out spiritual knowledge. And then she saw my face on one of my videos, and that's how she kind of discovered me. So that's one of the weirder experiences that I've had. And that would be my experience of bilocation. It does seem like there's some part of us that's more spiritual that can detach from our body and move through time and space and kind of have conversations with people and do things. And yeah, so that's that's my take on it anyway.
Harry Smith made an interesting film called Late Superimpositions in 1964 that combines Kiowa peyote rituals with other, filmed elements from multiple locations in the same film image. Interesting.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ihasa. And Vincent Muller is saying various interesting things, including Lazarus, INRI, and I see you. Frater, brother, whoever you are, Vincent, don't worry, because we see you too. Thanks for being here, everybody. 48 viewers now. We're at a new record for my channel, so it's great. The longer we talk, the more people are listening. So no, I don't think any of us regret spending our July 4th Friday here or the Saturday in the winter of Australia. It's been a great time.
I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I'm gonna have to bow out as it approaches.
So
11. I got to get my.
We are done like dinner, brother. We are done like dinner, and you know what? I'm excited to see you at Enochian And I'm also planning actually a trip next year to Mississippi for not to see you, but I'd like to see you as well. Do you think perhaps we can maybe hang out since I'm going to be in the state? That
Hell
would
yeah.
be fun.
Come see me.
All right.
I'll take you to
All right.
the mound sites.
Yeah, just make sure I survive and get back home, please.
You'll survive.
Ecce años de quitolis peccata mundum. Absolutely. Thank you everyone for being here. It's the last chance to throw a little super chat or emoji or throw us some bucks. If you want to throw us some Starbucks or something like that, we appreciate it. We're all building a mystery together with Arcane Research Society and Enochian. We're doing what we can to bring about in-person gatherings, events, retreats. If you join the Arcane Research Society, you not only get access to our annual conference, Enochian, and all its recordings and addenda indefinitely, you get access to the fall workshop, which I'll be doing in Austin, Texas this autumn. Get access to the winter workshop, which we'll do in either Seattle or Vancouver with it seems like Rufus Opus will do that with me. And then we have a conference next year, which we're looking at doing in the States. Yeah. So we have here we go. This is a great note to end on. Visual representation of Peter Thiel's money. Someone here in the chat understands the spirit in which we are approaching all of this material. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much to everyone being involved. And remember, you have to take this stuff extremely seriously. You have to take this stuff so seriously. It's life and death. There's absolutely no room for jokes or humor or any such shenanigans and tomfoolery. We must be serious practitioners. Otherwise, Crowley will come and send Lam to haunt us and haunt our dreams. So thank you everyone for being here. It's been just such a delightful evening. And I'm glad that you guys did all stick around for almost 3 hours, because it's so hard to arrange these roundtable discussions. You know, it's even harder to get a four-way between 4 guys, you know, and we did it. It was a big enough. Thank you, Matt Brown, for posting Frater Eleftheria's pencil-drawn analyses of Enochian names and spirits on Twitter. Thank you, Elon, for making Twitter a place where he could safely do that without being called some strange Gen Z name that none of us understand, like Gat or something, because we're older. We don't get it. Do you know what a Gat is? I don't know. I still don't. I thought it was a Gat, but a Gat's not a Gat. Oh, Dan knows. What's a Gat, Dan? Oh, no, none of us know. So none of us know. God bless.
I've never heard
the
that word.
millennials. God bless Gen Z. You're our future. If there's anything we can do to help you understand the madness of us Gen Xers and elder millennials, we're here for you all. And yeah, the chats are just coming in. A Gat is a gun. Yeah, a Gat's a gun, but what's a Gat? I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask one of my Gen Z students. I think it's a body part, but I'm not even sure. So yeah. Also, if you join the Arcane Research Society and attend the conferences this year, just this year only, you get access to a year-long academic study course by Dr. Sasha Chato. This is phenomenal. You'll miss out. You'll regret it. I know I'm going to get emails saying, I wish you had been clearer about what this was, because I would have done it. So you can still get it afterwards. You can still pay a couple $100 a month and take this year-long introduction to Western esotericism after Enochian is done. You can still do that for a reasonable price monthly, less than half of what you'd pay at a university. However, I got her to include it for free for all who attend Enochian this year. It's a big deal. We're going to level up the occult scene, the esoteric scene, all at once, and this is your chance to do that. After this, it has to be charged for. So I'll play a little video as an outro for that. Thank you all for being here. It's been absolutely delightful. And let's maybe we don't have to wait a year to schedule a round 2. Maybe we just do it whenever the 4 of us are feeling like a little foursome.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
thank you
guys.
everyone. I'll see you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
I'll see you all soon, online or in person at Enochian. And without further ado, here's a bit of information for you all about Dr. Chato's course. And thanks for being here. This is one of my favorite Fridays I've had in a long, long time. You know, being older, I don't go dancing at the clubs like I used to. So this is a party, and he likes it too. Hello. All right. Peace.
The Arcane Research Society proudly presents Dr. Sasha Chato's Introduction to Western Esotericism, a fully online course with over 45 hours of recorded lectures. Study at your own pace with a course guide, reading lists, and immersive activity packs. Designed for practitioners and for scholars, it's engaging yet challenging with expert support from Dr. Chato. Watch 2,000 years of esoteric history unfold, from the mystic currents of Hermeticism, Neo-Platonism, and Gnosticism to the alchemical fires of the Renaissance and the evolving traditions of modern occulture. Uncover hidden truths, debunk myths, and trace esoteric thought through time. With over 20 years in education, a champion of scholar-practitioner dialogue, Dr. Chato has taught this course since 2010 to hundreds of satisfied students. Get this course free with a ticket to EnochiaCon 2025. After that, it's $1,500 Canadian dollars for Arcane Research Society members or 2,000 Canadian dollars for non-members with lifetime access.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. Enochian is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leach, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chato's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to EnochiaCon 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to EnochiaCon.com or ArcaneResearchSociety.com for more information.
That's all, folks. Thanks for being here. Frater, good to see you. Your sick self. Take some tea and honey, brother, and I'll see you soon. And yeah, what a journey. It's been a hoot, a blast. I figured someone would bow out after the first hour, so it's pretty wild that everyone stuck around so long. Absolutely incredible. I don't know if we'll break the internet, but in a perfect world we would, right? So
yeah,
I hope
it's been a great discussion. And thank you for organizing all this as well and facilitating. It's been really good.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. It's just been what else are we meant to do? I mean, if not us, who? If not now, when? Yada yada. We're gonna build some in-person stuff and online stuff and make life a bit more interesting and hopefully help people find a sense of higher consciousness throughout it all as we discover what it is to be alive. I mean, that's what it's, as the Hermetica says, life and light. I think that's a nice phrase. I'm glad they champion that phrase. So, all right, we'll end with a shout out for Lon Milo Duquette's tarot book, because I still have that as the video for ending the stream. So enjoy the stream. Thanks to Evokar Lux on Facebook for doing professional sound design, and thanks to Justin Hagberg for doing keys on the track in which I played Irish low whistle, bouzouki, and guitar. And buy Lon Milo Duquette's tarot architecture book, because it's absolutely incredible the way he ties in the cube of space to the Ark of the Covenant. And you know, you can color the pages of the book, and that's what they're designed to do. So designed to be. So, hallelujah, amen. We'd end with a prayer, but you know, let's go heterodox style and just say, nature provides.
All right.
See you,
Good night,
homies.
guys.
Peace and love.